From Southern California, this is The Circle of Insight, a show about everything in psychology. Hear the latest in news and views on psychology. Our motto is simple: wherever there is psychology involved, we are there. And now, here's your host of The Circle of Insight, Carlos Vasquez.
Welcome, everyone, and thank you again for joining us. We have a wonderful show today as we're going to talk a little bit more in depth in part 2 of ISIS. Today we're going to talk about some of their advisors, some of their members, how others view them, and some of the strategies they're using with our special guest, Dr. Amirkhizi. Thank you very much for joining us, Doctor.
Pleasure, Carlos.
Dr. Amirkhizi, for you who haven't watched the first show, is the Senior Director for Central Asia and Middle East at the GPRA Group, which is a commercial and risk assessment group. That's the GPRA Group. He's also former UN Director Office on Drugs and Crime in Afghanistan. So let's get started with this. That's a mouthful. How does the strategy change for ISIL? Because you were just talking a little bit about that in the last episode, how when they go into a city and they don't have tanks. Can you go back a little bit and tell us about that, how they change strategies?
Well, perhaps if we go back a little bit before they started capturing these cities and how they were operating at the time where they were created. Before 2010, when they were expelled to Syria, what they did was terrorist activities. They killed coalition forces, they killed Iraqi army people, they killed Iraqi civilians, and they just tried to make sure that the country is destabilized. There is no stability, there is no strong government. So this was their aim at that time. They could not do anything more. So when, in 2014, when they came back inside Iraq from Syria, they had many years of this experience of fighting a central government in Syria. And with that, and also the internal political situation of Iraq and the position of government among Sunnis was also weakened. And they saw this possibility that these people would join them, or at least they would not oppose them. So many people from this Saddam's army and Saddam's government and Ba'ath Party leaders, they joined ISIL at that time, and they started occupying Iraqi lands. And people in the Sunni areas, they did not put a defense. So they captured all these military bases and armament. So now there is this military with tanks, with heavy armed machinery, who's trying to move forward and capture more lands. Now, what has happened that in U.S. air campaign against air raids, against these ISIL forces started in August this year. And then what happened is that their advance in Iraqi areas was stopped. It did not mean that they left. It's just that they could not advance as much because these air raids created difficulty for their mobility and move forward.
So do you think the air raids are actually working?
They are working in stopping them from advancing, but it is not enough to destroy them.
Aha. We'll get more to that later.
All right.
Okay.
So what happened, and then, so what they are doing now, they are now solidifying their positions. And once the Iraqi army, who are being trained now, again.
You said by 3,000?
More than 3,000 U.S. advisors, military advisors are there to train about 9 brigades, both Iraqi and Kurdish Peshmerga, to actually go and push these people back. So once with all this continuation of the air raids and the push by the Iraqi army, once when they start going back, pulling back, they would pull back into the cities because they no longer can use this heavier machinery and armament. So they move into the cities and again continue their terrorist activities. So we will see cities destroyed in fighting between Iraqi army and these groups trying to capture the city. So they will go, it's not a front anymore, it's homes. They are going to take refuge at home. They're going to use snipers. They are going to use bombs to kill Iraqi army people, soldiers.
It's a very complicated
It's
fight.
complicated. So the tactic would need to be changed at that time. And once the Iraqi army, they go inside the cities, no more air raids can be done. You see, so so the Iraqi army would have their
So the
hands
strategy
full.
shift is when they go back in the city, find residents in people's homes, air raid stops.
I mean, you cannot go and just have continue air raids at the cities.
Right, can't
So
do that.
that has to be changed. So again, at that time, the tactics needs to be changed, and again, at that time, we have to look at these people as organized criminal groups. In our different cities, mafias, how do they operate? They have homes where they stash their money. They have homes where they stash their arms. They have places where the people are hiding. With good intelligence and good tactical training, these Iraqi security forces, they will have to go to the cities and pull these people out.
That sounds very dangerous too.
That's the only way. I mean, when they go to the cities, you have to push these people out of the cities, and that means going and hitting them on their resources.
Yeah, we'll talk more about that in part 3 as we figure out how to defeat ISIL.
Hi, welcome to Adelante. This is Adelante Recovery, and my name is Yvette Kuglin, and I'm part of the staff.
Adelante Recovery Center has helped people in dual diagnosis for 5 years. We accept most PPO insurances and provide luxury accommodations and 24-hour support. To speak with an admissions counselor, call 1-888-242-4450.
A lot of time we don't even know what's wrong with us, and sometimes we need to get away to figure that out. So if you want to go for a little retreat out in Corona del Mar, which is a confidential location, we're here to help. So we're only a phone call away. Thank you.
I'd like to explore more about the CEO, Abu Bakr.
Mm-hmm.
Can you give us a little background of who he is and maybe some of the latest news?
Sure. Al-Baghdadi, in 2004, that's the first time that he created his own group in Iraq. His group was this army of Sunni people.
Army of
Sunni people. He started this group in 2004. Before that, in 1999, there was a Jordanian extremist called Zarqawi. He created his extremist group, which was the Organization of Unity and Jihad. And so in 2003, when the US forces and coalition forces went to Iraq, Zarqawi increased its activities and started killing the coalition and the Iraqi army people and the civilians. And in 2004, he joined with Al-Qaeda at that time, Osama bin Laden.
Oh,
He joined Zarqawi. And he created the Iraqi Al-Qaeda.
Yeah, Iraqi Al-Qaeda.
Al-Qaeda. And at the same time, Baghdadi created his own organization, as I said, the Army of Sunni people. But the Al-Qaeda people, the Osama bin Laden and his deputies, they considered Zarqawi's tactics too brutal. And in summer of 2005, actually, Zawahiri, who was the deputy of Osama bin Laden, he wrote a letter to Zarqawi, and gave them 4 steps to follow. And these steps were that your first aim should be to expel the coalition forces. Second would be to establish a caliphate in the captured areas. And the third would be to expand your rule to the neighboring secular countries. Neighboring secular countries from Iraq means Syria and Jordan. Not Saudi Arabia.
Not Saudi Arabia.
Not Saudi Arabia, but continue on that. And then start confrontation with Israel. So these were the 4 steps that Al-Qaeda put to Zarqawi at that time in 2005.
Now, was it an ultimatum? Either do this or you're out? Or
Well, it's kind of a, let's say, a letter telling them this is how you should operate.
Okay.
Because he was part of the Al-Qaeda and he was the leader of Al-Qaeda in Iraq. But actually what happened is that, and he was told that don't repeat the same mistakes that Taliban did in Afghanistan when they excluded their local people. So, but Zarqawi did not go with that. So in January 2006, Zarqawi joined Al-Qaeda, kind of a combined Al-Qaeda with other extremist groups, and started this Mujahideen Shura Council.
Now, the Mujahideen from Afghanistan?
No. It's just Mujahideen,
Mujahideen.
to people who fight for God.
That's what that means, Mujahideen?
Yes. So,
people who fight for God.
Jihad means, you have heard of jihad. Jihad is the holy war. Mujahid is a fighter who does jihad.
Gotcha.
Okay?
So Mujahideen is the fighter fighting for the holy war.
So he started this Mujahideen Shura Council in 2006, in January 2006. And in summer of 2006, he was killed.
Who was that?
Zarqawi.
Oh, Zarqawi, okay.
Zarqawi was killed by U.S. forces. And in October 2006, this council that he had created joined other militant group, and they started this Islamic State of Iraq.
So ISIS.
ISI at that
ISI,
time.
okay.
Islamic State of Iraq. And then the massive operation by U.S. started in 2006. And in 2010, in April 2010, 2 of the top leaders of this Islamic State of Iraq were killed in Iraq. And Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi became the new leader of ISI at that time.
In 2008.
2010. April 2010. At that time, to keep the group alive, with the money coming from Saudi Arabia and Turkey, he moved his operation to Syria.
Interesting.
To eastern Syria, and started to capture lands there, and this confrontation with the army there. In the beginning, this group joined with Syrian, it's called Jabhat al-Nusra, the Syrian Al-Qaeda, but now they are fighting each other. The Syrian Al-Qaeda found this big group very brutal and not in line with their aim, so they are now fighting with each other.
That actually leads me to another question. We talked about a little bit about this before the show. How are other groups looking at ISIL? There are some groups that you mentioned, the Champions of Jerusalem. That is an Egyptian group, I think.
Egyptian.
And they favored ISIL's tactics. But there are some other groups that do not like ISIL tactics. Like you mentioned, Al-Qaeda seems to have a conflict with that. So they're too extreme for Al-Qaeda.
Yeah, it's quite ironic that Al-Qaeda considers the actions of this group so brutal. So they are fighting each other. They are not in line. And they also, the more moderate militias who are fighting Assad in Syria, they are also against the Islamic State.
Because I know I've read, I think it was in The Economist, where they were saying that there are certain imams from across the Middle East condemning ISIL's behavior.
Oh, yes.
Saying this is not representative of Muslim behavior whatsoever.
Of course. The majority, they do it. And even those who are for it, they do not say it in public. This is not something, whatever they are doing is they are getting these people or recruiting these young people underground, informally, not very actively. ISIL is active in its web pages to trying to attract people coming in. But the physical networks that goes and collects these people, they do it underground. So this al-Baghdadi became leader, and in 2014 he came back to Iraq, and so he's the top leader.
And now, right now, they said they think they might have wounded him.
Yes, there were some air raids by U.S. and they think that they first thought that he's dead, but then they are saying now that his deputy might be dead and he might be wounded. So there are no definitive news on this issue.
Now, there's an old Greek myth, if I remember correctly. I think it was the Hydra, where you're able to cut the head of the snake off and it regrows. The reason I'm mentioning that, because some people say, well, look, even if you target the leaders, Abu Bakr, whoever it may be, the CEO, the CFO, they're going to just replace them with somebody else just as bad. Do you think that's true? Do you think it actually works by attacking those leaders? Does it demotivate the group?
I think ISIL, they have invested a lot on the persona of al-Baghdadi. And in case that he's dead, they would lose a lot of that power that they created for themselves. And if new leaders come, they would have more difficult time trying to get back to where al-Baghdadi left out everything. So I think if al-Baghdadi is dead, it's going to hurt the group. And if the future leaders are also hit, then this would create, many people joined ISIL because they thought this is a winning horse. Many of these extremist groups in region, they joined ISIL because they thought, okay, this is a strong group, we are going to grow, we are going to capture lands, we are going to have good money and good areas to do whatever we want.
You almost make it seem like it's a job.
It's a job. I mean,
we got the corporation similarity, but now it's like, well, this company is going to last.
Yeah, let's join these people because they are the winner.
They provide good benefits, and we'll have job security.
But once these leaders are hit, and the advances are no longer there, and they have to go back from the occupied areas, and they are hit in all their resources, many of these smaller extremist groups, they would go back again to their own smaller operations to keep themselves alive.
Interesting.
So I think hitting these people hard, Baghdadi and the future leaders, in case he's dead, is going to destroy this group from their operation in Iraq. But the point is how to make sure that the group is destroyed completely, and the mistake the mistake in 2010 is not repeated.
And we'll get to that in part 3. And it seems like Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi is like a Hitler, maybe like a Castro. Does he have that kind of personality? Is he that dynamic?
You see, what we have is only the readings that we have on al-Baghdadi.
Oh, that's it.
I mean,
so he doesn't preach.
He does, but it's secret. It is not that he has this. Once after they got Mosul, he went to mosques and he preached once, and it was on internet and still might be on YouTube, but that's it. And it is not something that it is repeated publicly, and whatever we read from him, it is mostly 2014. Many people who followed issues of Iraq and Syria, they knew al-Baghdadi when he started in 2004. And there were these indications that he was even arrested and jailed by a coalition in Iraq for several months in 2004. But afterwards, what we see of him is in 2014, and the news talks about his strong persona, his strong charisma among its followers, which are these 15,000 foreign troops.
Interesting. Wow. Another wonderful show as we really explore deeper into ISIL and what they're all about. Thank you very much, Dr. Amirkhizi. Again, thank you for joining us. I hope you enjoyed that. It's an amazing inside look into ISIL, really following their operations and the people in there. So join us next time in part 3 as we're going to ask the big question. Is the current administration handling this situation correctly? And if not, what can we do to defeat ISIL? See you next time, everyone.